Welcome to Resume Well. Welcome back to Resume Well. Today on the pod, we are so excited to welcome Ashley Graham. Ashley is a very well-known publicist, entrepreneur, and thought leader. She has made her mark in the business world with sharp acumen and a passion for innovation, navigating the complexities of entrepreneurship to become a true industry trailblazer. Her commitment to excellence and empowerment, especially in promoting diversity and advancing women in business, woohoo, has fueled the success of her enterprise. Beyond running her business, Ashley is a respected PR and thought leadership advisor, providing invaluable insights to enhance influence and impact. In the dynamic world of public relations. With a track record of success and a dedication to driving meaningful change, Ashley continues to inspire and shape the future of business. So join us as we explore the conscious PR with Ashley Graham. Ashley, thank you so much for being here.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me into this space with you.
Yes, and I was so excited for this episode. So we connected a couple months ago and had what was supposed to be a 15-minute connection session. And we ended up talking for an hour. And I was like, I love her. You're just so, you're so warm and just down to earth. And it's something that I have to say is rare. So I'm very excited to have you on. I do like to start off by asking everybody, if you actually were at a dinner party and somebody asked you, what do you do? How would you respond?
I never always have a good consecutive answer for that question, but here's what I'm going to say. If I was asked at a dinner party what I did, I would lead in sharing that I inspire connection through the impact of people's stories.
Ooh.
I think that that's kind of just a good overall consensus of really the impact of PR, thought leadership, and media for me. Is it's a way to activate other people's stories to ultimately serve, the livelihood and just the well-being of other people.
So I love that. Can you explain for some of us what the difference is between marketing, sales, and PR? Because I think we kind of blob them together. That's a very technical term, blobbing them together. And I'm not I think a lot of people don't know what the difference is. And that can get really confusing, especially if you're an entrepreneur or solopreneur and you're like, I know I need some kind of quote unquote marketing help, but you're not entirely sure what that means and what exactly it is that you need. So would you mind just breaking it down on a very elementary level, what the difference is?
Yeah. So I envision public relations almost being the center of all these other forms of marketing. So if we think about just a chart, you have public relations and then all of these other influences that kind of expand below it. I feel that digital marketing, social media marketing, influencer marketing, and all these other different variations of marketing all serve public relations in a way, because public relations is anything that is public facing and really ensuring that all other facets of marketing are speaking to one core language, one core story. And that really is, again, the center of public relations. It's understanding the main message, the main impact through that message, and who you're looking to serve. And all the other forms of marketing, again, are speaking that same centralized language.
Okay, that's good to know, because I think a lot of people just go straight for marketing help and then it doesn't work and they're like, why? And it sounds like it's because the core message isn't really fleshed out.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely kind of the first starting point. But then I think if for any reason you're running into issues with maybe the story or the message not hitting, it could just be that there needs to be little tweaks along the way, or just continuing to evolve your message as the business or the person continues to evolve. I think that's something that people miss oftentimes, is they think that one marketing message is supposed to be the evergreen constant, but your message is going to evolve and it should evolve. And then other parts, if there are any issues, is just almost kind of looking at more of a strategy on consistency and patience and waiting for it to land. I always kind of like talk about that sometimes about the missed parts of public relations in my context and thought leadership is sometimes playing the long game
Mm-hmm.
is a better approach because it really does take a long-term viewpoint and really nurturing your marketing message. Whereas I think it's human conditioning that we want immediate results. We want to have the immediate fix. And sometimes it's just looking at it from the long-term perspective is more important.
You were in corporate and you left corporate to do your own thing. So you kind of got to work out everything like on your own business before working on other people's, I would imagine. So I'm so curious to know like everything about that decision and how you came to the decision to leave corporate and kind of a stable, paycheck or a stable job with a, normal expected paycheck. So what did lead you to that decision and how difficult of a decision was it?
Yeah, I'm having to reflect on what was it? It's maybe been almost 8, 9 years since I kind of left the employment world and into the space of entrepreneurship and all the wonderful lessons and changes that come with that.
Yeah.
And again, thinking back, one of the biggest catalysts and the reasons why I wanted to leave a cushy position was because I really wanted freedom and flexibility to not only explore the amazing opportunities that entrepreneurship provides of being able to travel, make your own schedule, and really getting back, freedom and time. But I wanted to be able to work with the types of clients and businesses that really resonated with me. And I think that, again, outside of the flexibility of entrepreneurship, you get to work with who you want to work with, which I think makes the work more meaningful and more impactful. And as somebody who is very intentional about what I do and how I live my life, it really kind of went back to a core characteristic of, what would fulfill me at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that is something that's so well said. I think a lot of people go into entrepreneurship because of the freedom aspect, but I don't think I've ever had anybody articulate the the freedom to work with who you want to work with. Like, yes, the schedule's great. Like, yes, sometimes you end up working more than you would in
Yeah.
corporate, but but it's for clients that you're like cherry picking, right? And that you actually believe in and want to work with. And that I'm so thank you for explaining it that way because that is something that is so difficult to get in corporate. I think it's hard to get a job, right? And it's hard to get a job at a company that you're excited about. And it's very rare to be able to work with people and clients that completely align with your values all the time. And as an entrepreneur, I love how you said that. I mean, like you can be very intentional about who you work with, which
Yeah.
will just create this wonderful ripple effect in your life where, you're dealing with people that fill you up and at the end of the day you feel good about it as opposed to going home and maybe indulging in a lot more some vices as opposed to like, something else that's healthier
Yeah.
or just like being
Actually,
happy.
yeah, you just used one of my favorite analogies of like the ripple effect. And something else that comes to mind is I have learned way more about business and how I apply myself in business by starting my own business than I would have ever gotten working for somebody else. I
Hmm.
feel that you are pretty capped and limited with your growth potential. Now, that's not to say that, some companies don't offer a really incredible growth structure for their employees, but again, thinking back and just looking at my experience through entrepreneurship is I've been able to learn things that I don't think I would have been able to learn working for somebody else. And I've been able to apply myself in different facets and different roles that I don't think I would have gotten so quickly. It's something that probably would have come at tenure status and on, whereas I've been able to take on different hats, in a short amount of time, just given the landscape of entrepreneurship and how to evolve, adapt, and explore different ways of being in business.
Yeah, that's so true. It is. It's like it would come like after 10 or 15 years when you're deemed like ready. And
Yeah.
the big thing about like entrepreneurship is so much happens when you're not ready. Like most of it happens when you're not ready. If you are ready for something in the entrepreneurship like journey, I think that's rare, right? It's always like you're just not ready and you have to go for it.
Yeah.
Which now I'm thinking that's probably a huge reason why there's a lot of discontentment in corporate America among employees, because they're bored and they're actually like having that challenge is really invigorating, and they're kind of just like not allowed to do that because of the structure. So what would you tell yourself, like going back to the you 8, 9 years ago when you started, now knowing what you know, is there anything you would tell yourself before making that jump, or in the midst of that jump? Or how about before making the jump?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I would go back and tell myself. And one of the first things that comes to mind right now, because I think I actually was reflecting on this pretty recently, is that if I could go back and start over, I would give myself a little bit more time to really hone in exactly what my big goals were for the business. I I'm the type of person that leaps before she's ready, because that's just the way that I learn more about myself and how I need to adapt through certain things.
Yeah.
And my first business I actually closed about a couple years ago. And one of the reasons why I think I just continued to reach burnout and just did not really see a path forward was because I didn't really think about the longevity of the business in a way that was both scalable, but then also really spoke to how I really wanted to impact through the business. I very quickly took on a freelancer role, took on the clients that I could take on, to figure out exactly what the offer suite was going to look like, because I came from a very diverse and expansive perspective of marketing, where I was wearing already many hats working in my employment jobs: office manager, admin assistant, customer support, marketing, digital marketing, all of these different roles that when I started my business, I basically had this mindset that I can help anybody and everybody and do full service marketing and branding, because that was just the mentality that I had at that time. But as most solopreneurs will know and can attest to, that you are not supposed to offer a whole silver platter to people if you do not have the support to back it up. And so what I had learned in different phases was to really hone in on a core offering that really impacted both the work that I wanted to do and how it was going to impact those that we were working together, which that's kind of how the Conscious Publicist came to be. The Conscious Publicist is my second business. And the reason why it is positioned in the way that it is, that really speaks to the longevity of the business that I'm really excited for, is because I had years of experience of just testing the waters, figuring out what I was doing, how I needed to apply myself. And so I was able to take that experience and really apply it to the next business. So again, if I could go back and save about 5-6 years of that process and kind of, would have had maybe the understanding to really put that in before starting, I would go back and do that. But again, I don't really regret the path, because the ideas and the direction really came to me because of that experience. So I can't really say that.
Hate on it too much.
Yeah, I was like, I can't really say that it's a bad thing, because, I got to this intersection of like, okay, this is how I can move forward. But
Yeah.
if I could go back, I would maybe save myself a couple of years.
Maybe. So how did you land on the Conscious PR, the name? Because I love
Yeah.
it. And your
Yeah.
branding is gorgeous. It's like so pretty and so alluring. And I love, I come from yoga and meditation and all of that. And I love, obviously, the word conscious, and it's just so great. So, you know, why, let's just start with there. Yeah. So why did you land on the word conscious PR?
Yeah. So the Conscious Publicist is basically a co-creation of two different identities. We're going to say identities, both my identity, but then also just, I think, a natural identity experience or phase that our clientele goes through. So, again, the core intersection of PR and media for us is thought leadership. And thought leadership for our clients is integrated. A lot of their thought leadership message and all that is integrated through their identity, their story, their message, why their businesses exist in the first place, how they're looking to serve and impact. And so the conscious publicist and the intersection of our branding and messaging is to speak really to that experience of our clientele. But on the other phase, identity is very much my identity. And I feel that, again, most businesses have this identity of their founders, their board members, all these personalities that really drive and move this business forward in a very intentional, mission driven way, very much speaks to kind of my journey. So, the conscious publicist, again, there's two different identities, one speaking to the clientele that we're looking to serve, but then also my identity and how I'm putting that identity into the business in a very conscious, intentional way.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, looking at your website, which is so pretty, everybody go to her website. It's like such a one, it's so
We
nice.
just we actually just launched that website.
You did?
Yeah,
Oh,
timing, like we're just gonna say the launch published deadline was in May, and so it published
okay.
about a week ago, saying that for whenever this decides to
Nice.
air for
Yeah,
timeline purposes.
yeah, well, it's beautiful. And practical. I mean, like it's very easy to navigate. I love it. So there were a couple things on your website that I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. And one of the things that in the copy, it says, let's rewrite a new narrative, embracing a more holistic and heart centered approach that resonates with the ever evolving landscape of consciousness. Oh my God. So, like, what? How does consciousness evolve?
I can speak to what I just see being in a very digital world that we all live
Mm-hmm.
in. That all of the stories, the messages, the pieces of content all come from a creator. And that person has been able to understand their creation methods, their creation methodologies, and how they have built communities and audiences that really stand behind their core message, their core strengths, and how they serve through their content. And so, although most people don't see that as a form of like raising consciousness, I believe that it is, because when we are on social media or on our favorite websites or whatever type of medium that you're looking at, you're investing your energy in reading those pieces and connecting with those creators. And when you're reading the story, if you find a couple of points that really resonate either with your beliefs or your story, or maybe just a shift in your energy or your mood that you're needing in that day, it really builds this conscious connection between the story, the reader, and the one who's writing the piece. And so,
Mm-hmm.
again, most people probably don't perceive that as a way of raising consciousness in the media, but I see it that way. I feel that, again, when we're investing our time and our energy to connect with content, either to find solutions to our problems or just find a feel good story that we really needed to hear to kind of shift where we're at in our mood that day, it's what
Mm-hmm.
really makes that work and powerful. And again, the intentionality of why creators create the way that they do.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, there have been so many studies, and I'm sure you're aware of them, but there have been so many studies about like if you're sick, watching positive and uplifting media, whether it's a movie or just whatever reels or whatever you're into, can actually help you get better faster because your consciousness is in a higher vibration, right? So
Yeah.
I think everything you're saying is totally on point. And I love the term conscious media because there is definitely, and I think, over the past decade, we've definitely seen like really like I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but we've seen like some craziness in the media and how it really, I mean, to use your term again, ripple effect, just how it affects like the whole collective is undeniable. So I love that your goal is really to create a conscious media space. So going into that, like how do you then pick clients as you now have this wonderful business and you're able, like we mentioned, to cherry pick what clients you work with? What is your vetting process like? Like how do you decipher between, or how do you differentiate between like a client who is aligned with your values?
Yeah. I guess from like point one is we do have an application process. So instead of just, opening up a line of communication for anybody to inquire, we do have a really intentional way of how we take applications from clients. And the way that that application process is really set up is, again, it focuses more on the story, the goals, the mission of the business, but then also how that thought leader is looking to expand through PR and media. So the application is intentional with the prompts that it gives, is because I want to get as much information about their mission, their story, them as a person, to understand, again, if they're a good fit for kind of this approach.
Mm-hmm.
Secondary to that, it goes into just I want to say vetting is not the right word, but looking at the media from a holistic perspective and seeing if myself as a publicist or as an ideator, if I am able to bridge a connection between their ideal media platforms of where they think their message aligns with, and understanding if we are able to create a very unique, holistic angle that would work for them. So
Mm-hmm.
again, this is kind of veering away from the consciousness part of what we just talked about. It's more so about like business research and development, if we would even be able to be successful in our efforts. But I do kind of tie in that intentionality part, that it's like, okay, do I believe that we're able to create a really good story, a really good hook based off of this client, and mold that in a way to speak to the mission of how we operate and evolve in the PR and media space. So there's a couple of different just ways that I approach that. And sometimes, again, I don't know if this is always like the best thing to lead into, but sometimes I just feel that, from an intuitive standpoint, again, as a very
Absolutely.
intuitive, like reflective person, it's like sometimes I'll just intuitively know if that client and I are meant to be in this really close partnership with one another, and if we're going to have a lot of success with our efforts. And the clients that I've worked with that I have just felt this just expansive energy with, we've had some of the most incredible results come in, because I think, again, you can't always put that in a strategy perspective, but sometimes you just really know when a client is a good fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just want to like underscore that with, if you're listening and if you are an entrepreneur, you're allowed to say no to certain to not taking on a client. Like if you're not looking forward to working with a client, then they probably shouldn't be your client. And I think a lot of, especially up in, new entrepreneurs, I should say, are, they need the income, right? They need the revenue. They want to, or the experience or whatever it is, mostly probably revenue, that they feel like they have to say yes to any client that comes in, through the door. And you don't. And I think what you're saying is like when you feel that fit, the success is so tied to that relationship. So
Agreed.
yeah, feel it out. And if it feels wrong, then, it doesn't mean that they're a bad person or you're a bad person. It's just like not a fit.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I also feel that sometimes timing is a big factor.
Hmm.
Is sometimes like even if they're a great fit in that time, but just the timing doesn't feel off either from, them not being able to move forward at that time, always keeping an open space that sometimes timing is just not right. And to always circle back and think that that partnership can still flourish into something. It's just maybe the timing's off.
I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about thought leadership because I think a lot of people hear that term. Some people know what it is, and other people just hear it and they're like, that, what is that? So you represent a lot of thought leaders. And I was like, oh, she would be a great person to explain, like, what is a thought leader? Like, they have a thought and they lead with it. And like, what are the requirements to be a thought leader? Can anybody be a thought leader? Like, can you break that down for us? Would you mind?
Yeah.
Would you be so
So
kind?
yeah, from like just the traditional standpoint, and again, I could always just speak from my perspective, is thought leadership is almost kind of the center again of all these other forms of marketing around it. There's a really incredible model that was created from a PR professional, PR practitioner called the PESO model. And if you're looking at that model, basically, there's a number of variations of paid media, earned media, shared media, and owned media. And so when you're looking at all of these parts of media, basically what lies in the center is the thought leadership. And thought leadership really speaks to the authority, credibility, and influence of somebody or a business who has really managed and executed all of those types of media in a really cohesive manner. And that's what, again, leads to influence, authority, credibility. Again, I feel that that is traditional, but it's very much still a living, breathing entity of thought leadership because it's all of these pieces of the pie working together. But I feel
Yeah.
that there's also a different era of thought leadership that needs to be talked about, that sometimes creators can also be thought leaders in their own way because they know how to execute their story. They know how to tell their message, and they really know how to use media as a way to bring that message to the forefront. So, what traditionally would have been organizations that have reached immense amount of success and really built that authority of being the leading company, the leading role in their industry, I feel that thought leadership is a little bit more expanded now, just given the nature and how social media has really expanded the marketing world. That's really, I think, where the biggest differences has come from, because now you can get on platforms like TikTok or LinkedIn and Instagram. And if you are very consistent with your message and how you connect with their audiences, you can reach mass amounts of visibility, which trickles into getting highlighted on media publications or getting interviewed on TV and all these other forms of media from the traditional PR sense. And so it's like, I feel that creators, again, who nurture that journey very well because they know exactly how they want to be known for, they're thought leaders, in my opinion. So again, I think thought leadership is taking a very traditional model in a way to get there. But I feel that, again, if you really understand your identity, how you want to be known, how you want to serve, and who you're looking to serve, you're a thought leader.
Wow. That's like so much to take in. I had so many thoughts as you were saying that. Like so many people were popping up. I could just like rattle them off. But I'm thinking, okay, one person I was thinking of is a Peloton instructor who started as a Peloton instructor. And she's like my favorite one, Allie Love. She's great. And she now has like, she's a host and she's has her own show. And she really, I'm just thinking like that's such a interesting way to put it. Like she really just nurtured having that platform and being able to reach all of her, students through Peloton, and like it just led her to this really amazing career. And there's like longevity in it. I mean, like how, I don't know what the, tenure is for a Peloton instructor, but that's pretty hard on your body, so it's so cool. And the other one I kept thinking of, like, is Taylor Swift a thought
I
leader?
I knew it. I was like, I had a feeling Taylor Swift was going to be part of this conversation.
She's part of every conversation.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you bring up Taylor Swift because I had pitched myself for a media opportunity talking about Taylor Swift and just this role of fan devotion, or just this energy of fan devotion. It was for Fast Company. And when I talk about always putting myself in the thought leadership perspective, or the thought leader journey, is I didn't necessarily say that I was an expert in Taylor Swift, but one of the things that I felt like I was an expert in was the psychology behind why audiences follow those that they feel so connected to. And one of the biggest things that I highlighted in that piece was just this space that creators that really know their stuff, creators that really kind of follow and fall into their craft and continue to follow all of the evolutions that they go through, is they open this space for their audiences and their community to feel as if they're going through that journey with them. So I spoke to, again, the psychology of how we feel so connected to people through social media or through other types of art and entertainment, is because they open the door to their life and they make us feel a part of it. And so I spoke to that, ended up getting quoted in Fast Company. And from there, it's turned into almost kind of this message of, again, speaking to the thought leadership journey and how devotion becomes a part of that piece, especially from the communities that they're speaking to in their craft. So
Yeah.
again, do not feel like I'm an expert in Taylor Swift and her marketing, but again, really speaking from the psychology just behind how people feel connected through mediums where we are not face to face with these people. But that is no longer just the one means of connecting with people anymore. Is, again, you're saying that you feel so connected to this instructor because you feel relatable to her in some way. And I think, again, that just really speaks to this evolution of thought leadership, is we're opening the door for people to find relatability and connection with us.
Yeah, and I think it's like relatability, and also what's the word? Like ambition, not ambition, but kind of, yeah, like an ambition to be like that person, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like them. So it's like they're a couple steps ahead of you, or maybe, a lot of steps ahead of you, but you see something, you see yourself in them in a very small way. And it kind of gives you this hope, like, I can also do it because she has this in common with me, or whatever it is. Which I think is so, yeah, like powerful.
It's like a path to possibility. You're like, wow,
Yes.
okay, if, because thinking about Taylor Swift, I had seen her in concert when she was still a country artist. And I mean, this was within the first 1 to 3 years of her journey in that way. And what might have only been 100 people in the crowd seeing her then, and then seeing how people are literally on wait lists to join, getting tickets to her concerts now, it's like, wow, she never gave up from that first phase into where she is now. And she is one of the most globally recognized people that, again, is taking so much narrative of how she continues just to take what she's learned, apply it, her life lessons, make it a part of the story. Because it's like we all relate with one another in different levels. If you really kind of pull the curtain back and be like, wow, okay, so maybe my experience is not directly relevant to hers, but it is to a certain degree, maybe because of emotion, very similar things that happened. I'm not going to keep going on
Yeah.
a tangent on that.
No, it's okay. No, I love it. And I'm also thinking, like, she's also, just from a PR perspective, like, she's had some setbacks, right? Like some public, I don't remember what it was, but there was, like, people were like against her at one point, and there had been moments where people have like started to kind of like turn against her, but she always comes out fine, and now she's a billionaire. How did she
Mm.
do that? Like, what's the secret sauce? I personally, if you want my my like non-expert, have zero PR experience opinion, I think it's because she's like in her heart, like she's actually like a good person. That's what I want to
Yeah.
believe. But I don't know, like from a PR perspective, was there anything? I know this is like a huge question, but was there anything during any of those moments that you were like, oh yeah, she like nailed it with that?
Nothing specifically comes to mind. I might have an idea of what you're referencing, but what I can say, and I'm just going to do a little shameless plug of
Sure.
my podcast, the Conscious Publicist podcast. I basically want to convey that there's so many different parts of what I perceive the thought leadership journey to be outside of the traditional sense. It's not
Hmm.
always about using the media to talk about successes, wins, strategies, and all of these other things of like, okay, this is how I've made it. Now I'm giving you, yeah, the menu. That is very much a part of it. But I want to convey the other parts of like the self mastery process. And so, again, a creator, or however they're going to identify in the thought leadership mix, is they go through what I find to be very human emotions, human experiences of being challenged with either comparison or being challenged with the fear of what other people might think or say about us. And it really comes down to core principles that at the end of the day, people will be people and people will think
Hmm.
and perceive the way that they perceive, and that's totally fine. We all have autonomy to see through the own lens that we want to see through. But a creator, and I'm again putting this into the perspective of Taylor Swift, making an assumption that she's already had to go through so many different phases of that, that she knows that as long as she's continuing to create in the way that she feels is aligned with her as a person, that she does her best, tries to do whatever she can to support other people, then the fear kind of subsides through that, because again she knows that she is a good person, she's doing the best that she can. And I feel that that is very much of this process of self mastery, that you can't really control everybody, you can't control every circumstances. Life is life, and there will be wounds that you'll have to put band-aids on, but as long as you're learning from that and continuing to grow to make sure that maybe mistakes aren't made in the future, then that's really all you can do at the end of the day. So I try to like convey that there is this self mastery process of the thought
Hmm.
leadership journey, because if you go from not visible to all of a sudden visible, you might get conflicting opinions sometimes on an interview or something that you said. And it's just, it's normal. It's natural. It's going to happen.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad we got to talk about Taylor Swift. I wasn't sure if that was going to come up, but when doesn't she? So I just want to wrap up with a couple just they're kind of like rapid questions, but they don't have to be. We talked about consciousness and media and all of these wonderful things that you do, but I'm also just wondering from, you know, just a very basic level, when you were up and coming, and you still are with your business, but throughout the years, what has been the best piece of career advice that you've ever received?
Best piece of career advice. I want to say it's kind of tied to what I was just expressing. Like you
Okay.
said, I always feel like I'm always up and coming. There's always new phases, new things to learn. I take pauses, continue to come back, as we kind of talked about before the recording started.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just advice that I've been given, again, not necessarily always in the career dynamic, but just an advice that I've gotten from mentors and even my clients, is that to have grace, to know that you are allowed to fail. Because, and it's really kind of shifted this definition of what failure means to me, is like failure is very much a part of the process. And it's almost a blessing to have experiences of failure, because now you know what the benchmarker is to move forward from.
Hmm.
And again, I'm kind of like paraphrasing, just conversations over the years, but it's really the best advice, career or even personally, that it really is okay to fail because you can evolve and grow from failure. It actually gives you anchors to work off of to move
Ooh, I love
forward in
that.
a more strategic or intentional way.
Yeah, I love that. Do you have any wellness practices of the moment that have been helping you be wonderful?
Yeah, there's a number. I think from just like the physical sense, things that help keep me like mentally, emotionally, physically, expanded and activated is one of the things. And again, this is going to sound so bad, but I have been the worst with drinking water and staying hydrated over the years. But over the last like year or so, is water has like changed my life in so many different ways. And I know that that's something like so simple, but again, I've been more of a coffee drinker. Water just, is something that just never really was on my attention. I was like, I need energy, I need caffeine. But,
Sure, yeah.
I've made it a point to really drink consistent amounts of water throughout the day. So I've kind of had this little trick for myself that before I even touch coffee, I have to drink a full glass of water.
That's
And
good.
then later on in the day, I also have to drink another glass of water just to make sure that, again, I'm rehydrating from dehydrating myself. It's kind of funny how all that, like, you know, works. But another thing is making sure that I'm consistently going on walks. I have a tendency
Hmm.
to kind of really hone in on what I'm working on, and time goes by and I realize that I haven't really moved. And so making sure that I'm incorporating movement has been really beneficial. So again,
Mm,
those are
yeah.
things that might seem easy, but I think it's good reminders. And I've been working on reminding myself of that more. But there's some other wellness things that just really help me feel connected that I perceive as wellness, but they're almost kind of just a little woo woo to some other people.
Well, my
But
next question was, do you have any like spiritual practices, if you want to call
yeah,
them spiritual? Because we were talking about consciousness, and obviously, like, I think when people hear the word consciousness, like meditation, and so yeah, what are the woo? I love that. What are
yeah.
the woo things?
Yeah, we'll transition into the woo. So meditation is, something that I have been doing for years and years, and I've really been able to feel the impacts of meditating. Some seasons, I meditate more than others, but I at least at the very minimal try to meditate at least a couple of times a week.
Hmm.
On my good days, I meditate about 5 or 6 times a day. But again, sometimes that's not really needed. But what I think a common misconception of meditation is it has to be this just fully encapsulating experience. You can
Hmm.
have really ethereal, deep connections with meditation, but sometimes I feel that just sitting there for 5 minutes, closing your eyes, and just focusing on your breath is a form of meditation. So I almost kind of like blend those together sometimes.
Hmm.
But then the extreme woo. And I actually wrote an
Yes.
article about this that actually brings in a lot of attention is I use a pendulum. And for me, a pendulum is a device to kind of tune in more with my intuition when I might feel like I'm way too in my head. So, for those who
Mm.
might know what a pendulum is or might not know what a pendulum is, it's basically a stone that is expanded from a chain or a string. It can be in different ways, but it's just a way to, like I said, just kind of tune in with energy of the body. It's a way to kind of give yes or no responses to questions that might be kind of circling in your mind. It's just a way to
Hmm.
kind of bring me back to my energy and my body when I feel like I am stuck in my head a lot. But
Mm.
then I don't always talk about this, but I am very much a oracle, affirmation card, tarot card person. I love the cards, and I think it just, again, it speaks to just art in a way that there are some incredible creators who have built beautiful, beautiful card decks with imagery and messages. And as a story person, I love connecting
Mm.
with those cards because it's a way to, again, kind of get out of my own head, connect with a story and a message that might be really positive for me to hear in that moment. As you were saying, if you're sick or if you're stuck in your head and just kind of feeling the weight of your emotions, if you focus on heavy stuff, you're going to continue just to feel the heaviness of that emotion. But if you focus on things that are really light and positive and fluffy, well, it kind of gets you out of that little loop that we can fall in sometimes. So that is
Yeah.
what I seem as almost perceive as like what could be woo. But it's like I
Yeah.
think they're very beautiful and they're incredible tools to have.
Yeah, I love that. I love the pendulum. I've not had anybody talk about that before. How do you I want to talk about that more because I had one and then my daughter was like obsessed with it. She's 3 and she thought it was like so pretty and she took it and I don't know where it is. I
Oh.
think she broke it, but it's fine. Um how do you use it? Do you use it like over chakras or do you how yeah, could you go into a little more detail?
Yeah, I use it more so like always keep it aligned with like my heart. And again,
Mm.
when I say I use it when I am like really complexed with what I am thinking or what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
Won't go too much into this, but I've used the pendulum as an incredible tool most recently through my experience with miscarriage and just what I could continue to focus on to keep the light burning bright without falling into the trap of like
Mm.
my emotions and hormones through the
Sure.
process. And so for me, I always like keep it aligned with my heart because I want it to really speak to what my heart wants to tell me, not my mind. And so
Mm.
I usually always just have it like aligned here. I haven't
Mhm.
really explored so much of like seeing which chakras are blocked. And I think it's just because I've never really been taught how to do it that way. But I am so very much open to exploring even more ways to use the pendulum.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for mentioning your miscarriage because that is so not necessary to do. It's very
I
personal.
know.
And I thank you so much. And I love it because I think that more people should talk about their experiences if they're comfortable with it. And they don't have to if they're not comfortable with it. So I'm grateful that you felt okay to do that. And we're all wishing you the most amazing recovery and
Thank you.
hope that, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm sure there is. I know there is. And, if there's anybody listening who's gone through that, we'll definitely add some stuff in the show notes about, articles or any kind of, support for that, because I think that, we were talking before that there's a huge lack of that, in the mainstream.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for all of that. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about or bring up, or anything that you mentioned your website is brandy new? Is there anything else like what's ahead for Ashley?
Oh, that is such a really cool question. And again, I can't make any promises when this is going to happen. But one of the things that myself, what I've learned again with this recent experience is that sometimes creating as us and sharing from the heart is really like all we need to do at the end of the day. And so one of these traps that I always fall into is always needing to create in a business context, share really, valuable resources on PR and business and all the things that go with that. But through my journey with the miscarriage is I really want to share more of me and who I am in the real, raw ways that I kind of navigate, challenging experiences, because I do feel that those hold merit and value as well. So I'm getting ready to launch a more personal blog to basically talk about things from, again, my perspective and how I've learned to evolve through challenging experiences as a way to continue to serve others who, again, might not have other people in their community who they can lean on for support. It's a way to kind of offer support in that way to other people as well. So that is something that I hope to have up soon. But then
That's
again,
so fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited just to, again, just create in the way that I want to create, not feel like it needs to serve a purpose or there needs to be a big call to action. I just want to write and write to write. and then
Yeah, I love that.
and then lastly is just there's always new things that I am sharing on the podcast that again might be really valuable for someone wanting to understand more of public relations, media relations, thought leadership, or just again my kind of pulse on the work. So the podcast is usually a really good resource just to kind of stay in touch and see what opportunities I'm sharing.
Nice. Yeah, we will include the links to all of this in the show notes. Ashley, you've been so generous with your time and energy. Thank you so much for coming on Resume Well.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see everybody next week. Thank you.
Bye.